In association with the College Football X, it is time to go single coverage. And with our rivalry series, our X Factor interview this week, Kennington Lloyd Smith III, Des Moines Register, Hawk Central, CyHawk is on the books. Kennington, thanks for going single coverage with me this week.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. It's an exciting time up here in Iowa, and there's plenty of anxiety on both sides of the fan base entering this weekend. So that just sets up for an exciting game, and there's no shortage of drama this week. That's for sure.
I was going to ask you, have you ever been part of a game, regardless of level, fan, TV, you name it, where you saw two safeties and a field goal count for 7 points?
Yeah, never in my life. But that was the case last Saturday, and Kirk Ferentz, Iowa's head coach, who has seen more football than I have, certainly probably more than years I've been alive, said that he's never even seen anything like that. So that just lets you know how rare of a game that was. And I think that contributes a lot to Iowa fans' anxiety going into this weekend. There was so much conversation about Iowa's offense and tinkering with it and changing it and what they can do to improve on it in the offseason. And fans showed up last Saturday expecting to see some elements of change. And not only did they see the same problems that they saw last year, but they didn't even have an offensive result as bad as what they saw last Saturday. I mean, you want to talk about your own 43-yard line as your starting average field position, and you don't get any touchdowns. Their only field goal came off of a South Dakota State shank punt that put them in field goal range already. Defense outscored the offense, obviously, with two safeties to a field goal. So it was just rare by all standards and metrics. And that, as you can imagine, has been the major talking point this week ahead of CyHawk is what can Iowa do to kind of rectify what happened last weekend.
166 total yards, if my math is right, and 4 of 17 on third down. That does not bode well going up against a Division One AA. Just dated myself with that reference. An FCS side in a border warish kind of a thing. I mean, where are the black helicopters and the gray clouds right now? Is it as bad as it is perceived?
Yeah, I mean, it is. When you look at Iowa's offense, this has been a long-standing issue. I mean, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but they've been 100th or worse in total offense at least 4 of the last 6 years, maybe even 5 of the last 6 years. I know that last season they were around 121st or something like that, near the bottom 10%. So it's been a frustrating point for the fans, especially because consistently Iowa has at least a Big Ten level championship defense. They have elite special teams as well. So when you have two of the three phases, on par and at a high level, and the offense is kind of lagging behind, it's hard to wonder what if with this team, if you're a fan of Iowa, like how far could the Hawkeyes go if they even had an average offense with this great defense and this great special teams unit? Last season, they made it to the Big Ten championship. And when you look at their offensive statistics, it's actually pretty remarkable that they made it that far. I mean, from the last 9 games. So if you remember, Iowa was ranked number 2 in the country last season after week 6. From that point on to now, their starting quarterback, Spencer Petras, has only thrown one touchdown pass over 9 games. And yet they made it to the Big Ten championship last year, and they're 1-0 right now. So it's almost kind of it's really unbelievable when you kind of think about their offensive statistics, but the team successes they've had in spite of that. But I think that fans recognize, and the coaching staff as well, that this is not a sustainable model. And they're hoping that last Saturday was going to be the first step in kind of building towards that offense that they're looking for. That wasn't the case. And against a much more dangerous opponent and a Big 12 foe and a rival in Iowa State, this definitely feels like a statement game for that offense and a legacy game for starting quarterback Spencer Petras.
So when we get into the finger pointing from the fan base, is it at Petrus? Is it at Brian Ferentz, the OC? Is it choice D, all of the above? Where does this go?
Yeah, I think that initially, and this is kind of going back to Petrus's early days and even some of last year as a starter, a lot of the frustration was pointed at him. I think that now the frustration has almost fully shifted over to the coaching staff because ultimately they're the ones who make the decisions of who plays, and it's their decision to continue to trot him out there. It's not like Spencer is going out there to play bad on purpose. He's doing the best that he can, but it hasn't worked to this point. And the coaches are continuing to have faith in him. He has a lot of program equity. And again, I don't have his exact numbers in front of me, but he has an overwhelmingly winning record as a quarterback. So they've won games with him, and the coaches are riding with him. But I think that the fan frustration is more so with the coaches. I think that you can point to quarterback recruiting. I think you can point to quarterback development over time. I think you can point to the system that they run and not putting players in position to be the best that they can be. And I think ultimately the decision to continue to put Petrus on the field, all of these things are pointed to Kirk Ferentz, the head coach, and Brian Ferentz, the offensive coordinator. So I think that's where the fans' frustrations lie at this point. And it's going to be on the coaches to make that call to switch quarterbacks or stay with Petrus. And I think that Saturday is going to be extremely interesting for that reason. I mean, if Iowa's offense really struggles in the first half, let's say it's tied 3-3, or they're down 10-3, or the offense has no traction, it's going to be hard to imagine a scenario where they continue to go with Petrus. At least that's my vantage point. The coaches, what we've heard this week, it doesn't look like they're at that point yet, but anything can happen on Saturday.
When you look at CyHawk, before you became a part of the Des Moines Register, what was your viewing / history lesson looking at CyHawk as a part of the dynamic when it comes to rivalries? And now that you're a part of it and you're covering it, what's it like covering CyHawk, knowing what it means to that state?
Yeah, well, before I moved out here, I really didn't have much of frame of reference. From Atlanta, went to the University of Georgia, so a lot of my rivalries, Georgia, Florida, the Iron Bowl, really all the SEC, ACC rivalries towards the end of the season, and then like Ohio State, Michigan, obviously. So I didn't know much about CyHawk. When I moved out here last year, that's when I really kind of got my crash course in it. Last season was actually kind of hyped up to be the biggest in CyHawk history with Iowa State in their top 10 ranking. Iowa was also pretty highly ranked as well. There probably wasn't a time where both of them were so highly ranked at one time, and what that could have meant for Iowa State to get over the hump last year. It went Iowa's way, but that was kind of my first real taste of the week. And I imagine that this weekend is going to be even more special because due to the COVID pandemic, there hasn't been a CyHawk game played at Kennington Stadium here in Iowa City since 2018. So, the fans, at least from the Iowa side, have been traveling over to Ames and they've been experiencing it, on the away side or on their TV screens. But now Iowa State is coming here. And again, with everything that I've kind of laid out about what exactly is at stake for Iowa, who has won this rivalry game 6 years in a row. So there is something to be said about wanting to continue that streak and what it's going to take to continue that. So it might not have the same hype as last year's. It's not up to be the biggest game in history, but there's plenty of intrigue. And this is going to be, a pretty significant game that's going to, shape the season for Iowa at least. I can't say that for Iowa State, but definitely for Iowa, it's going to be a huge game.
Kennington Lloyd Smith III hanging out with us here on the College Football X, going single coverage this week, talking CyHawk, part of Hawk Central and the Des Moines Register. Legitimately, what kind of a game are you expecting? I mean, obviously, if you're a fan of the Iowa Hawkeyes, you're looking for something that's more than 7 points, and obviously you mean more than 8. You want like 10, you want that offense to get humming. What kind of a game are you expecting? Are you expecting something in the mid-20s? Are you expecting that it be half past crazy, something like that, high 20s, low 30s? What kind of game are you looking at here?
I'm expecting it to be a low scoring game. A lot of the problems on Iowa's offense do have to do with injuries. Excuse me. They have to do with injuries, especially at the receiver position. There's not going to be much help on the way in terms of pass catchers on the perimeter. That's going to limit how much Iowa can challenge Iowa State vertically. On Iowa State's side, they're going to have to go into Kennington Stadium, which over the last year or so, and I'm only speaking last year or so from my personal frame of reference, but it has grown into one of the more significant home field advantages. I mean, going back to last year, Penn State, when they were ranked in the top 4, and even last week, they were playing South Dakota State, which is an FCS school, but it was a sold out crowd that forced 9 false start penalties because of how loud it is inside of the stadium. So Iowa State coming in with a brand new quarterback, a lot of new pieces on offense. I'm wondering how much composure they're going to have. Iowa's defense is elite. So I expect them to keep Iowa State's offense in check. Iowa's offense hasn't been great, so I don't know if this is going to be the week where they're just going to kind of explode. So I'm expecting something, in the teens at the most. I think that there's going to be probably some turnovers on both sides, and I think that this is going to come down to a lot of it's going to come down to field positioning and special teams, which Iowa has a decisive advantage. So I'm expecting a low scoring defensive slugfest.
All right. So give me the spot shadow real quick. Yeah, at the beginning of TV coverage, usually there's the play-by-play and the color guy. They sit there and it's like, okay, look for this guy on offense, this guy on defense. If you're in the color chair for this game, and you get a guy to focus on offense and a guy to focus on defense, and it could be something off the beaten track. Who's in your spot shadow for CyHawk from the Iowa perspective?
Yeah, on offense, obviously Spencer Petras is the one who's going to be in the spotlight as a starting quarterback. Outside of him, I would say Arlen Bruce, their guy who's emerged into the number one receiver just because of the attrition at that position. But he's somebody with a lot of expectations coming into the year. And he played pretty well last Saturday despite all the offensive shortcomings. On defense, I'd have to say cornerback Riley Moss is going to be matched up against Iowa State's wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson, who is an All-American candidate, going to be a high draft pick. He's going to put up a lot of numbers in that offense in the Big 12. So I think that Riley Moss against Xavier Hutchinson is going to be a huge matchup to watch. And then if I could go maybe a wild card off the beaten path, I would pay attention to the special teams. I mean, Iowa has a first-year starting kicker. They have one of the best punters in the country in Torrey Taylor. On the Iowa State side, they have 2 true freshmen starting at kicker and punter. So in me talking about how I expect this to be a low-scoring slugfest, field positioning, that is going to be a huge aspect of the game that I think ultimately decided if one side or another gets put into a pinch that they can't, break out of field position-wise or special teams or anything like that. So there's a lot to look out for in all 3 phases, which is what is going to make such an exciting game.
All right, time to cut the promo. For those that want to keep an eye on your work, where do they go? How do they do it? How do they follow along?
Right. So you can follow me on Twitter at Skinny Kenny. So that's SKINNYKENNY _ Skinny Kenny _ and then HawkCentral.com. So HawkCentral.com. HawkCentral.com. Skinny Kenny _ on Twitter.
Kennington Lloyd Smith III, part of Hawk Central and the Des Moines Register, previewing CyHawk for us. Thanks for hanging out with us here, and thanks for going single coverage on the College Football X here at OSG Sports. Be well. May everything meet deadline for you. May you not have any hiccups along the way. Have a great game and have a great deadline. May everything work for you and everything be plugged in. May the Wi-Fi work and all of that stuff. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you so much. And everything you just said, I don't know if people understand how important all of that is to my job. You talk about writing on deadline. I know me personally, I have to have a story out at the final buzzer. So one way or another, I just hope the game is decided and there's not a lot of drama where I have to rip up my story at the end. So I appreciate it and I'm looking forward to the game.